moving from magazine to product was something that I loved. Honestly, it was something I was missing to get that product side of things. And it taught me more about, what people are interested in and how do you bring these different types of things together to tell these stories or to make it interesting for somebody to want it and, take it home with them. And so, that was where it, sort of came together, and we jumped in and got it rolling.
Welcome everyone to another episode of F5 Collective Presents Women in Business. Today we have with us Trish Church-Podlasek, who is a dear friend of mine. I feel really lucky to be able to say that with confidence and joy. Trish is the owner of Cuorebella, which is a beautiful store in Kansas. And we're going to talk about that and Trish's life as an incredible creative director and so much more. But without further ado, Trish, it is a joy to see you. How are you today?
You as well. Thank you so much, Linda, for having me. I so appreciate it.
Absolutely. This is so worthwhile, and I've been really loving watching how you've created the store and how it has this. I haven't had a chance to get back to Kansas. I promise I'm coming. I will. I'll come back. One of these days I'll come back.
That'd be good.
But I love what I see online about the entire experience. You've always been such a beautifully creative person, and the environment that you create really sets the stage for what you're about to experience with Cuorebella. But before we get into all of that, just say a little bit about where you're from and when you realized your passion for design and art and all of that.
Yeah. So I grew up in the Chicago area, a suburb of Chicago, and I always wanted to have something to do with art. I remember begging my father to let me take art lessons because my older sister was, that kind of thing. I was very fortunate that my high school had a full art curriculum.
Wow.
So they taught, you could take everything, printmaking, drawing, painting, graphic design, which was a newer kind of trend back then. They guided me, and I remember when I was choosing, what to become, what type of career path to head for and for college, and they said you should be a graphic designer, and so I did. I mean, it was a very special era to be able to do that in high school.
Wow.
So that was my start. And I dabbled in all kinds of different things. I was able to try jewelry making and, just all kinds of things. And then I went to college at Drake University, and I studied graphic design, and I had a minor in jewelry and silversmithing. So I graduated with a Bachelor of Fine Arts degree from there.
How cool. Now, what was it about graphic arts that drew you to it?
I think for me, there's a control factor. I'm a little bit of a control freak, and there's a puzzle piecing to graphic design that is very much a part of who I am. I like to solve those puzzles, and to this day, I create parts and pieces, and then I assemble them into something that becomes a printed piece.
Wow!
So it's all about puzzle making.
Wow. Now, what was it that then led to, because you've been doing the graphic design, but you really live kind of beautifully in the lifestyle space. So how did that go?
Yeah. So the lifestyle, it was first my mother, who was a very elegant woman. And she had an artistic side to her that she never really utilized in front of me, but it was there. She would style our home with, beautiful floral vases and just different things that she taught me to love, China and the finer types of dishware. And I remember it, I just thought that was how it was for everybody. And at some point
Yeah.
in my life,
Yeah.
I realized, wow, that's really unique. It's not something that a lot of my friends knew about, that kind of thing. So it started with her. And then being in school at Drake, they try to gear you towards businesses once you graduate that are there. And Meredith Corporation is there. And my first real graphic design job was at Meredith as in the book group. And I actually worked there for a few years, left, and then made my way back. So it was about 13 years later, I think I made my way back, and I worked there for another 10 years. And during that 10-year stint, that's when I went from being an art director of craft magazines, which is sort of a side of me where I like to make things. I like to make lots of things, all different kinds of things. And I oversaw all these different types of magazines that, featured, needlework or quilting, painting, all those kinds of things. And then I moved over into which was called special interest publications. And with the special interest publications, I was in the interior design group.
Oh, okay.
And that's where it really blossomed. As a art director and a creative director, you are challenged with creating magazine layouts with all of these beautiful photographs. But then part of the job is to go and get those photographs. And so I was fortunate to travel to beautiful homes, just, high-end, gorgeous places where you're a fly on the wall and you get to take these beautiful pictures, bring them back and help tell a story with them, partner with the editor and get something beautiful out of that. And one of the nuggets in those types of magazines was to be able to create a feature story that was based on some sort of concept like tables, like side tables or something like that. And I got to create visually beautiful photographs that were artistic, the combination of how you would lay out those tables with florals or something, just some sort of interesting composition for the magazine. But then also, you worked with these photographers that just had an eye for capturing the light and the way you looked at things. And so all of that plays very strongly into what I do in the shop.
Yeah.
I create little vignettes that all sort of tie together with the merchandising. And it's all connected. Everything I did throughout my life brought me to where I am today. It's all connected.
Well, I was going to say, I know you worked at Meredith, and we had worked together on the catalog and at a Hallmark. And what then led to Cuorebella, and also Cuorebella paper?
Yeah. So Cuorebella goes back a lot of years before we even, put it together. And honestly, the concept of my husband and I having a store together was before we were even married. We coming up on our 45th wedding anniversary, and we were courting. It was just something that we always said, I'd love to have a store someday. And it just evolved for us over the years. And that was a beautiful component of us. And then the Cuorebella paper is my work. It's my florals, my paintings, my cards. And, hopefully that's going to be a really nice, strong wholesale business for us at some point.
Right.
We've just started it, and it's like any new business, you got to give it time. You wish that it would turn on overnight, but it doesn't, but it will. It will.
But so moving from the corporate world into entrepreneurship, what was that transition like for you?
I was so ready for it. I was done with the corporate structure, the way that you have to be, the things that you're challenged to do as in a corporate position. I had leadership positions, and it was great, taught me lots, but it was never something that I truly, truly loved.
Mm.
And, there was an illness that I had. And once I finished through that process, I said, if we're going to do this, it's time. We need to go after this dream that we have. And, it was the scary thing to start your own business
Mm-hmm.
like that. The investment that it takes, do we really know what we're doing? What is it? We just had this concept. And was always well trained at putting together, the philosophy of things, the pages of things, the look of things.
Mm-hmm.
And so we assembled this look. And my job where I met you,
Mm-hmm.
was working on that product catalog, and moving from magazine to product was something that I loved. Honestly, it was something I was missing to get that product side of things. And it taught me more about, what people are interested in, and how do you bring these different types of things together to tell these stories, or to make it interesting for somebody to want it and,
Mm-hmm.
take it home with them. And so, that was where it, sort of came together, and we jumped in and got it rolling, just had faith.
Wow. What's it been like? Because I had asked somebody about this another time, because they are in partnerships, or they were in partnerships with a family member. What's it like working with a
Yeah,
family member and partnering in that?
we're fortunate it worked out. I remember we at the very beginning weren't sure of each person's roles
Mm-hmm.
specifically. And as it turns out, we balance one another. My husband is very strong on he was in retailing, so he knows the stores, he knows square footage, he knows what to look for, he knows, we'd always talked about what kind of space would we need, and what's it going to
Mm-hmm.
take to be in the right space, and put the numbers together, all of that. And the product categories that we wanted to carry, we each had affinities for parts of it. So for him, it's the gourmet. He loves the gourmet foods. I'm
Mm-hmm.
all about the stationery, of course. And then glassware was a big deal for him.
Mm-hmm.
And home goods was kind of both part of us. We would just say, do you like this? Do you not like this? And everything to this day is, we confer with one another to make sure we feel that it's what we want to present. It is us.
Yeah.
We do, and our customers recognize that. They love that we have that ability to share, and they feel that it's a curated selection of things when they come.
Yeah.
And, cards, I pick every single card. I remember sort of being shocked at some of the wholesalers. Like, you could buy this gigantic package of something for, you know, $500, take this, and, you're all set up. I'm like, I'm not going to do
Mm.
that.
Yeah.
I'm going to
Yeah.
pick each part. And that's what makes us unique. And that's what people recognize. And, that's a very strong component of it. We wanted to create something that was inviting,
Mm-hmm.
cozy, peaceful. We had always been told through our lives, family members would come to our home. They're like, it's just so peaceful here. It's
Mm-hmm.
just such a, comfortable place to be. And we've taken that into the shop with us. And we have people that come in, and they come for that piece. They come to, sometimes it's the end of the day and they just need to walk through something that's pretty,
Yeah.
and it helps to relieve that stress. You haven't asked me this, but the aha moment that I had
Mm-hmm.
with this business was when we set out to do make such a pretty place and have it represent something that, we didn't know if it would actually convey out. People started telling us, yes, that's what we feel here. They'd walk through the place and they'd say, you have a beautiful shop. And they'd talk through the different components of it, and it's so peaceful here. And when they tell you that, and they still tell us that every single day, we hear somebody saying that. It's that's why we do it.
Yeah.
That's it. When you set out to do something and they tell you that you're doing it, we've made it happen.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
That's you like I said, you can see it even when you're looking online. I mean, even how you present the different products, and it's very intentional. And it helps as a customer to be able to see how you could use it, right?
yeah,
How it could live in your life. And I also know that like to you like to curate artisan, really handmade, and if you could speak to that a little bit, because the importance of that and the
yeah.
value of that.
Um, it's interesting. I tend to, first of all, I love to hear other people's stories, artist
Mm.
stories. Why did they do what they do? That kind of thing. But usually, first, it's the thing that they do that catches me. And I'm like, where does this come from? Who is
Mm-hmm.
this? I find in the shop there are a lot of watercolor artists because they do what I do in part, but also just because they do it well, and I admire what they do, and I love what they're putting out there. And so, I bring them in, and I love it when people come in and tell me that they know that person, or they know, have collected, they like to shop those items, that kind of thing. And, so that's a part of it. We also try to bring in local people who are
Mm-hmm.
artists to just do pop-ups, present their wares, and sometimes for people to just get a start, get a perception, like they're trying to create something and they don't know how to get it out there. We try to give them an opportunity to show it, to talk to
Mm-hmm.
it, to see what it's like to be in front of customers with it. That's always kind of fun to do too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you also have the workshops there,
I do have
and
the workshops.
how did those start?
Well, um, the watercolor workshop is something I teach, and
Mm-hmm.
that started about a year after we opened. People were asking for it. They're like, "Do you teach watercolor?" And I remember being afraid of it, like, I don't know if I could do it. And I had a very good friend tell me, she said, you would be an amazing teacher. Don't worry about that. And so I thought, well, I'll give it a try. And I started to do them. And I haven't really changed it. I've been doing it for about 8 years now.
Wow.
And what we do is sit down, everything's provided. So you get a nice pan of watercolor paints, you get the watercolor paper, you have examples, you have a beautiful space to be in with all of our shop surroundings. The space that we're in now, you can move the tables away, and so we can just create a nice workspace for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And we paint. We paint flowers and nature, dogs, whatever somebody wants to do. And I paint right alongside with everyone. But the goal is to pick each person needs to pick one of their paintings. And at the end of the workshop, I put it into a notepad for them. So they come back
Oh
and pick
yeah.
that up. It's a 100-page notepad with their artwork on it, which always elevates whatever it is that you're doing. So these pages, these paint sheets are just full of all different kinds of, flower groupings or whatever it is that we've painted that day. And each person brings their own self into it. So everyone has a little bit of style. They have a little bit of, maybe they haven't painted in years, or maybe they've been a good painter and they just wanted to do something. It's more social,
Mm-hmm.
to be together with other people doing it.
Nice. What got you into watercolor? Have you always done it?
Uh, no, not always. I mean, I've done it. Like I did it in
Mm-hmm.
high school. That was probably the first time that I really started it. But I've always done a little bit of it on the side, along with all
Mm-hmm.
my other little things that I like to do. I was big into sewing for a long time, just on the side. But um, I, as I thought about the business and what I wanted to start,
Mm-hmm.
I chose that the watercolor paintings and stationery as my look and feel. You have to narrow the scope and
Yeah.
pick something. So that's what I did, and I haven't ever grown tired of it. I am a person who needs other people to sort of prompt me to say, could you paint purple flowers? Could you, do something? I have this girl that I'm working with right now that she loves to create events, but she doesn't know how to illustrate them.
Mm-hmm.
So she's doing like a bridal shower off the market. So could you paint, a market cart and, baskets of fruit and that kind of thing? And it's like, yeah, absolutely. So I love that interaction that I have with people and being able to do the watercolors, create them, pair them with the graphic design, create invitation stationery, notepads, whatever.
Yeah.
It's simple but lovely.
So, you bring up about the cards, and I know that um, the handwritten communication is really it's very important. It's a huge product focus for you,
Yeah.
and I'm curious about in the midst of the digital age, that this trend that we are seeing actually of the handwritten communication coming back.
Yeah.
How has that either affected the business or prompted you, or were you already, I mean, I know you, so I already kind of know the answer. You already were all about it before people were like, let's do it again. But,
Yeah. Yeah.
How has that really kind of
And
morphed all of this?
there's always been a faction of people out there that love to write notes,
Mm-hmm.
usually older generation.
Yeah.
What's super encouraging is to see, if, like, for example, I met a young artist right out of college we were at a buying market, and she was selling her cards. And she went to college and decided to graduate and go into business for herself, making cards with her
Wow.
watercolors and her wording. And I was just floored by that. I was like, all right. And she even said to me, she said, there's a trend of people, coming back to this. And I hope it's true. And I'm thinking, well, you're a great example of it right here. So we're seeing some of that in our shop.
Mm-hmm.
Younger people are coming. There are some businesses out there that are doing some phenomenal things that are bringing people to it. So there's a brand. Can I talk about another brand for a sec, or does it?
Sure, why not?
Well, Emily Lex is, to me, I think she's just blown up this year. So she's a watercolor artist. She does
Mm-hmm.
cards, but she was brilliant and came out with notebooks for watercolor painting instruction.
Oh, wow.
And I'll send you one.
Yeah.
She and she's got oodles of them. And I remember at first thinking, well, since I teach a watercolor workshop, I really shouldn't bring that into the shop.
Mm-hmm.
But I saw the trend coming with it, and I thought, well, what the heck, we'll bring them in. And it has brought, we get them, we order them every 2 weeks pretty much to bring them restock because they come and they go so fast.
Mm-hmm.
And people are buying multiples of them. They're like either animal related or bird related or flower related. They're focused on a theme. And she has a little pencil sketch and then her painted version of it, so each person can just paint it however they want to.
Wow.
And they're nice quality, and it's something that has encouraged people to be more tactful with what they're doing. This watercolor trend, anybody can really go back and try that and do it. And you feel an element of success when you're filling that book and seeing your work come together.
Yeah.
So, I'm very encouraged by that kind of a thing. And the cards and the sentiments, people writing and talking. There's a bit of a mix still out there, but there is nothing like receiving a handwritten note in the mail.
Yeah.
First of all, the envelope sticks out. Somebody's handwritten your name. or done it in a really nice font if it's a more formal invitation or something, but it's not the standard junk mail that you get.
Mm-hmm.
It's an event. You open the envelope, and in a lot of cases with my work, I've lined that envelope with something interesting and beautiful. Then you open the card and read it. What's on it? What is it saying? What's the message happening with it? And there's nothing to replace that.
Yeah.
It's warm. It's loving. It's a way to be personal in this crazy digital world. And whether or not it's super popular, it's gaining again. It's
Yeah.
coming back in a bigger, maybe different way than it's been. So I'm very encouraged to see that.
Yeah, that's as a writer, that obviously is very exciting too, and someone that came from the social expression space, right?
Right.
It's I think about it, and I think about the experience of the store, and it makes me wonder: is there something when you're looking for a space that you think, okay, I need to keep this in mind? Because I even think about how you maybe position the cards, and do they have pens beside them so that it's known that this? I mean, what do you keep in mind with something
Yeah,
like that?
that's kind of huge, and it's very subtle, and it's also something you have to learn and relearn and relearn.
Mm-hmm.
So when you look for space, first of all, I look for light and structure. And the space that we're in right now has a huge bank of windows, and it has shades because the sun beats in later in the day, and you got to protect everything. But that aside, we chose a paint color for this not huge space, but it
Mm-hmm.
has very high ceilings.
Okay.
And so it's actually smaller than we've been in two spots. The
Mm-hmm.
first spot was sort of darker, not bad. We painted the walls a sort of blue gray and had sort of a grayish floor. This space has a cement floor, polished cement floor, white walls.
Mm-hmm.
And the white is like this luminous white. And then the sun comes in there and it just kind of sings to you. It's just
Mm-hmm.
beautiful. And then everything on top of that shows, the flowers, nothing conflicts with the background.
Yeah.
So, that was part of it. The next step is when, what's the flow of customers coming into your space and going through it? And in our case, you come into a vestibule, two walls, you walk to the left, but what do you have there in that front spot? And we've got tables and wall decor, and everything there stops you. Like you just walk in the door and you just look and start to pick out the little pretties that are there or the bigger things or whatever it might be. And that there's some sort of industry standard out there that you're not going to sell anything within the first 10 feet of your store.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we've broken that in this space. It works. We sell things
Wow.
from right inside the door. Um, there are shelving units, and there's a pathway when you come in. You go all the way down the whole bank of windows. There's a shorter wall in the middle that separates the other half of the store, basically. And so you have this natural track of following all the way down those windows and then coming back around, and our registers in the back part of the shop there. And each spot along the way, I have learned by watching sales what does well where. There might be
Mm-hmm.
a certain spot where I put wreaths, little mini wreaths or something, that they're gone quickly. So making those little vignettes,
Mm-hmm.
those little spots. I mean, our store's full of things, but you're not. It doesn't throw up at you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You go in and you're able to take in portions of it. And honestly, you need to do it a few times to go around that track a few times to see everything that you want. And many people do that. We have a whole section of cards that line the walls, where in our first shop, that whole area was like a separate, like a L shape, and it was its own space. So many people never even knew we carried cards in
Wow.
that space. And where we are now, it's a huge component of it. And our card sales have probably tripled since we just have that different presentation.
Right.
So it's interesting how, the psychology of people perceiving items and what they want, what they're looking for, how that works,
Yeah.
and you have
Yeah.
to, as a shop owner, you need to understand every inch and how is it being utilized, how is it not being utilized, and analyze that every single day. What's right, what's wrong, what's not being noticed. And I also believe in the energy of movement. When you move things, they get a attraction. People will look at them, and maybe if it's sat there for a long time, it's you got to move it.
Right.
So there's a lot of different factors, and a lot of different things that you need to look at. And you asked about the partnership between my husband and I. For him, laying out that space is his natural. The fixtures, where does this go? What do we do with that? And then I go in and sort and put things together. And, he can't do that. And I can't do what he does. It's interesting. I'll be challenged with a shipment of things that come in. It's like, how am I going to work this into the space? And you just, I kind of talk with him and say, what do you think about moving this or that? And we get there together, and it just works. So it's the magic. It's the magic of putting it all together, and then listening and seeing what people say and what they do and what do they miss, what do they like, makes a big difference.
Well, it speaks a lot to the value of creating this experience rather than just this place that place you walk in to pick up something.
Right.
Right. I mean, it's not the corner store. It's an experience.
It's an experience. It is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. That seems really important. And so it kind of makes me wonder, when you are curating, what are you keeping in mind when you're looking for different products? What is it?
We first of all, we set our categories and sometimes change them. We follow sales, what's doing well. So we introduced jewelry a couple years ago, and we've kind of dabbled in it, and we've decided to really expand it because it does well. And so to curate that space, I had to give up something else. So then you start to look at what's not really performing, what's not the trend anymore. So for example, when we first opened, glassware and curated glassware, beautiful cocktail sets, beautiful whiskey sets, they sold extremely well, did extremely well. And over the past, 3 years, they've really been dwindling. People just, I don't know, they're not buying glassware from us anymore. I'm not sure why. I think there's still a need, but it's just not happening. And so we're giving that up and adding the jewelry. We're not eliminating it completely, but there's a big downsizing in that category, and there's this upsizing in the jewelry, and we'll see how that works.
Right.
So when we go to market, we look for what is us, first of all. What do we know that people have, like pearls are good sellers. People love pearls, and we found this really great pearl line. So we're trying that out. It's just trial and error. A lot of things that you need to sort of wait for. You introduce something, your customer needs to get used to knowing that you have that. We have tons of regulars, but we also have brand new people all the time. And we have learned that sometimes you're going to, hit the chord immediately, but a lot of the time they need to remember that you have a great selection of jewelry, you have a great selection of cards, that kind of thing, before they really, show you the dollars for it.
Yeah.
So that's a big part of it too.
Yeah. Giving it the time, the space. It's the same with, it's so funny. Back in the day, and I know you'll remember this, a TV show would start, right? And you had to just give the TV show time. I mean, Cheers is a really great example.
Yeah.
They waited until it took off. They don't do that quite so much anymore, but that was the whole thing. We got to see if people are going to start watching, if they're going to start engaging.
Yes.
Yeah, that's a gift. And I'm wondering, does the because you have been a creative director and an art director, how much of that kind of mindset plays into how you deal with the store and how you deal with this new kind of journey that you're on?
I guess it's all a direction. I mean, you're choreographing all the different elements. So that is a big part of what I was as a creative director for magazine.
Yeah.
You're choreographing all the different components and spots, and kind of goes all the way back to the beginning with puzzles. It's all a big puzzle that you have to assemble and reassemble and reassemble as the stories change.
Yeah.
So I guess that is, at the core, that's who I am, is being able to do that.
How many folks do you have work? Is it just you and Vern in the store, or?
And our son. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And he's only part-time. So it's mostly us. It's mostly us. It's a small little business. And this is kind of our, semi-retirement thing to do. Because we've worked our careers. We've had our big corporate careers. And it's so much better working for yourself and making your decisions. And if you fail, you fail. If you don't, you don't. It's good. And you have permission to try different things and come up with an idea and say, what do you think of this? And yeah, let's try it. Let's do it. So there's this, I love that this is how I'm spending this time in my life where, I have friends who are fully retired and they're traveling, and I don't really have a desire for that, at least at this point. Maybe someday, but this is super good. I have a purpose, a really nice purpose, and we have people who come to just feed their soul. And I believe that that's why we do this thing. That's why we fell into doing this thing, is that we're serving a purpose for other people, whether it's a gift that they want to buy or they just need a place to go.
Yeah.
And that's good for us, good for our souls. So that's why we do it.
You're online, and it's always interesting to me, the balancing the online with the physical space. How do you, because I can't imagine you have everything that you have in your space online. So how do you decide? How do you decide what
the website, it was something we created out of necessity during COVID.
Oh, okay.
You gotta have something out there to try to allure people, at least to communicate with your customers in some way. And it is, it's lovely if you get orders from across the country. We have pretty good Google search, and that does bring us nice orders from across the country, and we love that. It's a different kind of business. It's kind of interesting. It's secondary for us. And so choosing what goes on is the availability of imagery. How easy is it? Just product descriptions. Because we pretty much do everything. My husband does the website, and he's whatever time he's got is where that comes from. And I'm happy to know that you feel good when you look at that space. It is, it could be so much more. I think that all the time, but it's just not a focus, other than we, do our best to give the best customer service and experience when you open the package, when you get it, that we can do.
Yeah.
So it's about that, you
Yeah.
know. The purpose that it serves, I would say almost primarily, is to be an informational spot for our local customers. They use it, and they started using it during COVID to keep in touch with us, but to know what we have, and it prompts them to come into the store.
Right.
Some will buy and maybe buy a little bit and do in-store pickup, and then they'll come in and they'll probably buy some more, and that's how it gets rolling. It also works well for us during sale time. If you are on our email and you can buy online first before the store opens, and so you can get first dibs on things that everything. It's all one inventory group, so it's not like we have a whole different web facility. It's not like that.
Right.
So it's more of a marketing component for us, and it helps us to communicate with people all over the country. So that's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I also saw it gives the updates on classes and your workshops
Yes.
and all of that, which
Yep.
must be really helpful.
Easy sign in, easy to work that. So
Yeah.
yeah, that works well for us. So
Yeah. What's next for Cuorebella and Cuorebella paper?
well, the focus right now is Cuorebella paper to get that operating and producing well. I'm not sure where it's going to take us, but that's a component. I've been super busy putting together a product catalog for that, and working with salespeople to get the word out, that kind of thing. So that's one part of growth. It's a nice space of growth for us. And then for Cuorebella, the shop itself, it's a little bit unknown. We're pushing it. We're pushing the categories. We're getting into more accessories for women. There's a lot of self-purchase that goes on. A lot of women like to pick up a purse or a piece of jewelry, that kind of thing. I spoke about that. We also have learned about the different times of year and what's going to work. Like gourmet is a really good category for us, but it does really well during the holiday season. It's a great gift. The gift for anybody that that has everything, that kind of thing. So we'll just keep pushing that along and seeing where it takes us. You look down the road at how long your lease is, and what are we going to do when that do we just re-sign up, or are we going to do something else? I don't know. I think that we'll probably continue. We've got a few more years left, so we'll see. But that's about what we can handle at this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to ask you if there is an interest in opening a second shop or anything like that. Or...
There is. There has been for a while. In particular, Vern, my husband, would love to open a second space, and we just haven't found it. We haven't found the right. Once in a while, we'll see it. We see it in other states. We think, should we have another place here, like in Illinois? When we go see family or such, there's some great areas there. We just haven't gotten ready to pull that trigger yet, but that's a possibility. That's a definite possibility to keep growing. And we're at the point where it's just us. We need to decide, are we going to push it and get bigger, better business out of that? I don't know. We'll see. Yeah.
Because then it's considering bringing in outside partners, right?
It is. And it won't be the same because I'm not there for like the custom stationery, but is there another person there who does their own? I don't know. If we want to have that kind of thing, or is it just a greeting card assortment, no custom work?
Right.
You have to weigh all of those components. And again, like choosing the space and, does it have good frontage to a road? People see you and recognize that there's something there.
Yeah.
Does it draw you in? So,
yeah.
We'll
There's
see.
lots to consider. Yeah.
There's lots to consider. Yeah.
Yeah.
staffing it, and you know that the staff is not going to be the same as you are.
Yeah.
So passionate, you have to find passionate people, and nobody's going to be as passionate as you are about your own business.
Yeah.
But if you find good people and you bring them in, we've learned that through our corporate jobs, is how to help find the good people and help them succeed and own what they're doing and enjoy it. So it's a goal at some point. Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Yeah.
Is there any last thing you'd like to share, Trish?
I don't know that I have anything more. I mean, it's a beautiful way to live your life. There's just so many good parts and pieces of it. I love doing it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you're good at it. I mean, it really is. It truly is an experience to see how you feel when you bring that up with that feeling of peace and so forth. But you know that this is a beautiful, what you're going to get is something beautiful.
I never get calls.
Well, of course you're going to get them now.
Yeah.
But that's why it's so great. What you're doing is what you've created with Cuorebella is so beautiful, and you know that will come into your home, which then enhances it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's been fun to see. This is maybe a little random, but we did a holiday house tour this year,
Mm-hmm.
and one of our customers was on the tour, and so we got to see our things in her home, and it was like, oh yeah, I remember when she came in and got that, and it was a big surprise. We didn't know, and there's something about that we actually had something that spoke to her that then turned into this placement in her home. It's kind of you feel very honored by that. It's neat.
Yeah.
So.
See it really come to life.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, I like that so much. Ooh, that's so cool. Okay, so we're going to do the BizFit minute. You ready?
Just a second. I have them written down here. For me, it's all about the customer. Provide a space that attracts them. Number one, you gotta invite them in somehow, help them to feel welcome. Be genuine. You got to be yourself, but also let them be themselves. You have to listen more than you talk with people. I learned early, they don't want to hear your stories. They want to tell you theirs. And they really don't want anything. You're like a safe space for them to talk. So, that's important. That's important for people to feel comfortable and to then, have them enjoy what you're doing. So that works really well. And then be open to whatever it is that they're asking you to do. I mean, you're not going to do everything that people ask, but a lot of times, they might just want, I had a lady that just brought in, she goes, I love your bows. I make bows for wreaths. Mm-hmm. And she's like, I love your bows. And she brought her wreath in and her ribbon. And she's like, could you make me a bow? I'm like, sure, that's not a problem. Happy to do it. Other times they'll do all of that in your shop. She's a good customer. I know her. And sometimes it's what they have. Sometimes it's what you've got for them. But just being open to do that for them. Not everybody's going to do that. A lot of places are just going to say, well, I don't make bows, or, it's, they know that there's an openness to ask questions, and, we'll try to do what we can for them. And then the sort of the last thing is to always evolve. Like we were talking about, what's the future? You just have to keep evolving, to bring that interest in and have it be renewed.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for that. That's great.
Oh, it's all right.
No, it's great. Okay, so now we have the rapid five. You ready?
Yeah, I
What
am
did you What did you want to be when you grew up, Trish?
an artist.
And here you are. Ah, I love it. Was it a graphic artist or was it just you
Just an
wanted to be an
artist.
artist? Yeah.
Just some kind of artist of some sort. Yeah.
Cool. Okay. What always makes you smile?
Flowers. And probably more importantly, the people around me, my
Yeah.
people. Yeah.
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 Yeah. What do you know now as an adult that you wish you knew as a kid?
That every single thing that you do builds onto the next. I mean, it just keeps building.
Mm,
Um, I wish I knew that when I was young. It
yeah.
was, yeah. So it's, there's something rich, really rich about that when you think about it.
Yeah.
Good and bad. It builds. It all builds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a cause and effect, right?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm. What is your guilty pleasure?
Vanilla ice cream and Chambord. To die for. I love that. Love it.
Wow.
It's so
Really?
good. It's so good.
How did
And
you discover it?
vanilla bean ice cream. I was at a bar once and somebody was making it and they served it and I was like, oh my gosh, this is so good. And so now, like, it just depends if we have Chambord in the house and or ice cream. But it's my guilty pleasure. I love that.
Okay, I like that. Wow. And this
And
last one,
you
go,
you
go.
gotta put it in a beautiful cocktail glass too.
Okay,
That's
there
it.
we go.
It's the
So not
experience of that.
so not like a solo cup,
No,
like a sippy little
no.
thing.
Although it would
Okay,
still taste good, but
it
no.
probably it wouldn't be the same.
Yeah.
Um, and I know this is going to be really hard for you to answer, but cat or dog?
Dog, dog, and dog. But however, there is a cat in my life. It's sort of a grand cat.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
my son and his girlfriend have a cat, and that's their whole life. So I have to say cat for that reason.
Okay.
Mr. Clyde Frog is his name.
Mr. Clyde Frog.
Yes,
That's
yes,
a good name. I like it.
yeah. But dogs for sure.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Well, please give a kiss on the nose to Charlie and Max for me.
I will.
Charlie, the mini reindeer. Trish, thank you for joining us today. This has been a delight, and I will make my way to Kansas. This is my year to finally get back, and
Can't wait to see you.
so to see you in person and to really be able to see the shop in person.
That'd be
I
fun.
would really love to do
That'd
that.
be fun. Yeah.
That'd be cool. That would be really cool. And everyone, thank you again for joining us for
Thank
F5
you.
Collective. Yeah, women in business. And please check out the website for Cuorebella. Learn more about Trish. The link is in the description below. If you are in the Kansas area, it's in Overland Park. Is that right? Or
Actually,
Leawood?
Leawood. Hmm.
Leawood.
Yeah, off of Mission Road. Hmm.
Okay, it's in Leawood, and go over, please check it out, and you'll be able to experience what we've been talking about with it being this immersion and just beautiful. We'll see you next time.
Thank you
Thanks
so
for
much.
joining us.
Thank you. Take care.